Morning, everyone. We are about to start our meeting. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 11, 2023 regular closed session meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. Madam Secretary, roll call.
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Chan.
Here.
Director Lenny.
Here.
Director McIntosh.
Here.
Director Patterson.
Here.
Director Young.
I'm here.
President Katz is on his way.
If members of the public are online and wish to make public comment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Madam Secretary, are there any speakers online for public comment?
I have one hand online for public comment, and I believe I have one person in the room for public comment, but we can take the online speaker.
All right, let's go. With regards to the speakers, when prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and your topic. Please refrain from providing personal information such as addresses or phone numbers during public comment. If we need this information, we will have you contact staff. The Secretary will call each speaker in the order received. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak. However, I have the discretion to amend this time based on the number of speakers. The Secretary will track time and inform each speaker when the allotted time has concluded. All right, Madam Secretary, the online speaker.
Lana Coleman, you should be able to unmute your mic.
I have. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, and your 3 minutes are going to start now, and I'm going to attempt to start a timer online so you will know when your 30 seconds are up, okay?
Thank you.
Your
I'm
3
Lana
minutes start
Coleman,
now.
Mrs. John Coleman for 30 years. There's no indication that the board is pursuing accountability for the multitude of errors committed regarding the retirement benefits which I'm entitled to share when John retires. The board president didn't respond to my request to meet. The vice president subsequently responded, politely refusing to speak with me. The excuse given is that I have an appeal pending against the district. The subject I want to discuss, however, is the district's internal negligence and incompetence, and these are not the subject of the court filing. So I'm back again today, as I said I would, to reiterate the facts in 3-minute increments. It's the same story. You have big problems at multiple levels of the district, and you are looking the other way. By looking away, you're not serving the organization well. I've given evidence to justify that an independent investigation into district wrongdoing is appropriate. There are ways government agencies can do this. I'm sure you're familiar. It's necessary because the senior managers of the district are guilty of negligence and incompetence and have already demonstrated a propensity to hide facts from the board. Here's a brief description of the situation again. 2 previous GMs told John his state service would provide benefit in calculation of his EBMUD retirement. They're referring to reciprocity. In October 2018, we were promised twice by your retirement expert and our manager that EBMUD granted John reciprocity with CalPERS, meaning his full-time state of California CCC salary from the 1990s would be used. They were clear, specific, and presented as the experts they were purported to be by the GM. Our mistake, we learned years later, was trusting your retirement experts. After receiving the clear promise twice, I initiated the process to retire early from my 35+ year banking career, forfeiting permanently my professional earning power. In May 2021, we asked for the benefit in writing in case needed for mortgage approval of the retirement home we're buying. We were told by HR and by senior management there was a mistake. EBMUD couldn't award reciprocity because CalPERS didn't, reducing retirement benefit at 36 years of service from roughly $72,000 to about $15,000. However, nobody at the district understood the ordinance because this reciprocity restriction is not true. It does not exist. Our mistake, we learned later, was trusting the senior management of the district. I'll continue the rest of this before a closed session, but lastly, I note a 5.4 increase is being awarded to 2 senior executives involved here in 11B of the consent calendar. With pending allegations of severe wrongdoing, How can you possibly vote in favor of this action?
Your
It's
3
beyond
minutes
my
have
comprehension.
concluded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Are there any additional comments online?
Hold on, I have to do my, one moment. I have no other hands for public comment online.
Thank you. I see that we are receiving public comment cards.
Thank you. We have Yvette Rivera.
Yes, Yvette Rivera.
And your 3 minutes are going to start now.
Thank you, Board. I provided 2 documents to you this morning. I'm going to talk about 2 things. One, the Ku Klux Klan civil rights lawsuit, Pierce Bland versus East Bay Mud, begins on the 100th anniversary of East Bay Mud's racist history. I'm looking forward to it. It's my compressed day off, so I will be there. I provided you 2 documents because I want to show you how negligent East Bay Mud is in training their managers, GC, everyone down the line on how to supervise employees. I'm providing you 2 things. One, the accolades that I received this year. I also received the worst performance appraisal ratings again. My appraisal was weaponized, but I got to see through the 2 perp complaints that George Cleveland and Joe Pagnolini talked about at the end of the year that other people had to go through having their appraisals weaponized. And I'll provide you those documents, unredacted, because the state of California provided them to me. So take a good look at how I was applauded, how it had to be obvious my managers, David Briggs, everyone down the line, Tony Montano, must have seen it because I was in splashes twice. Somebody joked about I should have my own column. The reason why I'm giving you this classification study document, and I'm not even going to name the supervisor who filled out the last page. I've bookmarked it for you. I don't have to name him because this is the sentiment of everyone down the line at East Bay Mud. Just look at his last line. His last line says, I also question the importance and effect on performance ratings of Section 4. Nearly everyone is rated critical, and not all essential knowledge, skills, and abilities are required at the time of hire. Look at the first bookmark. It tells you how you should know how to supervise, that you should know the laws and regulations on how to supervise, effective supervision. But this supervisor, and I'm going to put that in quotation marks, doesn't know. But it's not only him. It's everyone down the line. Last thing I'm going to say is this catalog came out today. It's the employee development catalog. It's the same stuff that has come out over the years, and nothing has changed at East Bay Mud. Really? You should have a catalog that tells employees and supervisors at the district how not to retaliate, how not to tell employees, maybe you should just quit if you're not happy, because the people that are doing the wrong should be the ones that are shown the door and escorted off this property. You should have classes on quite a few things, and I'll elaborate on that later. But one of them should be how to order office supplies for Black people.
Your 3 minutes have concluded.
At a future time, I'm going to quote this document. I'm going
Thank you,
to
Ms.
wrap
Rivera.
up by saying everyone got this pink folder. Look at Sarah Hakim's declaration to see
you,
how
Ms.
not
Rivera.
to order supplies at East Bay Mud
Do we
for
have
Black
any
people.
further speakers for public
Thank you.
comment?
Be 1 moment. I have no other hands for public comment.
Seeing no further speakers for public comment, we will now convene into closed session to discuss closed session business. Thank you. We will return for a regular general meeting at 1:15. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 11th regular business meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. We will receive reports from this morning's Planning and Legislative Human Resources Committee meetings at the end of the meeting. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman,
Present.
Director Chan,
Here.
Director Linney,
Here.
Director McIntosh,
Here.
Director Patterson,
Present.
Director Young,
I'm here.
President Katz.
Here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I Pledge allegiance
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There are no announcements from closed session. We move to public comment. If members of the public are online and wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Comments on non-agenda items will be heard now. Comments on agenda items will be heard when the item is up for consideration. Madam Secretary, are there any public comments for non-agenda items online?
I have one hand for public comment, Lana Coleman. I am going to see if it's for an agenda or non-agenda item.
Okay.
Lana, you should be able to unmute your mic. Can you hear me?
I did, Risha. Can you hear me?
Yes. Is this on a non-agenda item?
Yes, essentially, yes.
Okay. So your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you. I am Lana Coleman, Mrs. John Coleman. This is a continuation of the statement I started this morning before closed session, doing this in 3-minute increments. In November 2021, we were told by 2 senior managers that there would not be any more discussions with the district and that we needed an attorney to file a claim. We couldn't talk to anyone, the Brown Act, period, end of story. We now know the ordinance says we should have been referred to the retirement board, but senior managers did not do this. Our trust that senior managers, who at that time were held in high esteem, would follow the rules was unjustified. We were denied due process. Also in November 2021, EBMUD inquired with CalPERS about reciprocity and learned that what EBMUD told us was not true. CalPERS documented this conversation in writing, and I've sent it to you. I hope the employee who negligently and unethically, perhaps illegally, hid this information is listening now. This information from CalPERS was not conveyed to us. Our case was filed in January 2022 in order to meet the 60-day statute of limitations. We have spent tens of thousands of dollars and endured untold hellish anguish at the hands of EBMUD and listened painfully to the district claim it didn't need to accept responsibility or accountability for these errors. These errors and many more that are related were sent in detail to Mr. McDonald, Linney, and Chan just before Christmas 2022. 14 pages or so of details were submitted. In January 23, there was a closed session meeting held jointly with the retirement board, and I was so relieved because I thought the extensive list of errors would be shared with the board, would be disclosed to you. Yet the information was not shared. It was rather kept hidden by those named 3 senior leaders. By the way, this entire statement I'm making is unrelated to the court case because we did not sue over incompetence or mismanagement. We hadn't yet uncovered all these mistakes when we were told discussions were over and our only available recourse was court. The suit focused on promissory estoppel and not on negligence. Ironically, the negligence prevented us from knowing there was negligence. Directors, you have a responsibility to hold your employees accountable for incompetence and negligence. This warrants an investigation by an unbiased third party. Are you going to do the right thing and ask questions? Have a third party identify and investigate the errors? Or are you going to keep looking the other way, literally and figuratively? Everything stated here is true and documented, so help me God. Lastly, I note a 5.4% increase being granted in 11B of the consent calendar. With pending allegations of wrongdoing, how can you possibly vote in favor of this action? It's beyond my comprehension.
Thank you, Mrs. Coleman.
Yes.
I have one additional card now from Yvette Rivera.
Thank you. I spoke at the morning meeting and provided you some documents. I am going to finish up with what I was saying this morning since I ran out of 3 minutes. But I'm going to talk about the 2 topics that I mentioned this morning. One was the Ku Klux Klan Act civil rights lawsuit filed by Saji Pierce and Ariel Bland. The jury trial begins on the same exact day as East Bay MUD's 100-day racist anniversary. I talked this morning about how the district allows, this board allows supervisors, management, SMT people to weaponize appraisals. Even though you may be told by Adam Smyer, the new labor relations specialist or manager, that appraisals aren't grievable and that they aren't punitive, you do not know that Local 21 superintendents advise foremen and supervisors that they can go to employee files to look at previous appraisals. Appraisals that are neutral for employees that have been here for a long time are a scarlet letter in their file. Even if an employee protests, the district has the option to not change that appraisal. The PERB complaints that went in, they resulted in a settlement that did not change those employees' appraisals. I'm going to talk further about those in the future. I do want to read from the Saji Pierce Ariel Bland lawsuit, the Sarah Hakim's declaration, and I said this morning that this should be part of East Bay MUD's training on how not to hire office supplies for Black employees. I found it troubling. Ms. Darrow rejected routine supply orders for Ms. Bland's office, but had approved similar and more pricey orders for Ms. Gunderson and Ms. Barnum without question. For example, when I placed an order for a desk organizer for Ms. Bland, Ms. Darrow rejected it as on the basis of $40 is high for a desk accessory. Ms. Darrow did not hesitate in approving Ms. Barnum's order for privacy blackout filters costing $218, or I'm going to skip to the part where Ms. Darrow instructed me to shop till you'll drop, shop away, in order to use remaining funds for the white employees. I added the tail of that. I do want to just end this by saying that because of the board of directors' negligence in not ensuring that everyone is properly trained in managing at East Bay MUD, East Bay MUD is going to celebrate its 100-year anniversary. And the picture I showed you, I gave you, is of Party Dam celebration, where only Black employees are serving white employees. Try not to have that happen 100 years from now. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Rivera. Madam Secretary, are there any other comments online?
No other online comments.
Okay. We move on to the consent calendar. Are there any board actions regarding the consent? Consent calendar has been moved and seconded. Are there any public comments on the consent calendar? Seeing none.
I heard you. I got it.
Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? The consent calendar is approved. We move to determination and discussion items. Item number 9. General Manager.
Yes, I am pleased to bring to you for consideration the appointment of Marc Carradine as the Manager of Distribution, Maintenance, and Construction. This division is responsible for the maintenance and repair of our pipelines and appurtenances like our valves and fire hydrants, as well as the installation of new water services. Marc has been with the district for over 33 years and started his career as a temporary meter reader before getting his first permanent position at the district as a utility laborer. He has held numerous positions in the maintenance department over the decades and is currently the superintendent of the South Area Service Center. Marc has a degree in liberal studies and a minor in business administration from Cal State East Bay. So I bring to you for your consideration the appointment of Marc Carradine.
I did have a card for that item, by the way.
Did you list it on the same card? Okay.
Yeah, I do see this on the same card.
At what point do I speak, after or before?
Just giving the board a moment to see if there are any comments or questions. So seeing none, I will call public comment. Yvette Rivera.
Thank you. when I read the agenda, I didn't see who was appointed. I thought that the woman who was selected and announced twice in the board agenda was going to receive it today. I think it's nice that Marc Carradine is becoming the manager. I just want to say that on the day that Director Lisa McIntosh passionately protested that recruitment and what happened, I considered that true allyship. But it isn't only her responsibility to show allyship at the district. Board members have known about all of the complaints, all of the racist allegations, all of the lawsuits, and you've continued to fund these attorneys to fight employees at the district that are just wanting equal rights. I don't know what's going to happen to the woman who was given the job twice and probably humiliated. But I want to tell you, the board, what happens to the people that let that happen to start with? General counsel, general manager, they played a part in that recruitment. When are heads going to roll? When is the district going to get people that do not uphold equality at this workplace, hold them accountable? Hopefully the trial coming up will shed more light on how racist this agency is, and I can't wait for it to start. I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Rivera. We have background in our packet. Is there a motion?
I
So
so
moved.
move.
Second.
Okay. The appointment has been moved by Director Young and seconded by
McIntosh.
the Director
Patterson.
McIntosh and seconded by
Bill Patterson.
Director Patterson. I am seeing everybody in a row, and I my eyes seem to default to just whoever is sticking the
We look
head out.
so similar.
No, literally a director went out. It's a matter of a few additional inches in a line. I should sit at the head.
Kidding you, Andy.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The motion carries.
Marc is in the room.
Which come up?
Come up and say a few
Tradition,
words.
we get to roast you or something.
Yeah.
I forget exactly how that works.
Does he work?
Yeah, we have kind of a reverse confirmation hearing. I don't know why we don't ask questions before, but we'd love to get introduced. Thank you for your service to the district.
Thank you very much, President Katz. Good morning, Board of Directors, General Manager Chan. Good afternoon, General Counsel, and everyone who is in attendance. 33 years ago, my uncle reached out to me and asked me to consider working at EBMUD just while I worked my way through school. I decided to do it. And then when I got here, I got tempted because it was a good place for employment. At that point, I got on permanent, and I only thought it was going to be about 5 years. And so I remember working with a particular foreman, and he says, "What are you going to do in X amount of years?" And I said, "Well, I'm looking to leave, finish my degree, and then go off in the private sector." And he said, "No, you're not." I goes, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Those golden handcuffs has gotten to you." And I'm like, I've never heard of the golden handcuffs, but the bottom line is that I've been here. It's been an interesting 33 years. It's been some really fun 33 years, some trying times, but I've learned a lot, and it helped to define who I am today. I just want to say that I have a lot of ideas about maintenance and about this position, and I always believe that when you enter into a position, you just don't fill it, you define it. And so my goal is to define the position. Again, I got a lot of great ideas. I'm looking forward to hopefully working with Mike Ambrose to implement some of those things. I know some of them are probably crazy and far out, but I'm still going to try. that's it. I'm not going to keep you guys long. I really thank you very much, sincerely, for this opportunity to be able to test my assumptions and to demonstrate that I'm capable of actually leading this division. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations again, Mark. Next, Kathy Viatella, our Manager of Legislative Affairs, will provide the legislative update. These items were also discussed at the Legislative Human Resources Committee meeting this morning.
Thank you, General Manager Chan. Good afternoon, President Katz, members of the board. It's nice to be with you today. So as was mentioned, I presented these this morning in committee. There are 3 bills recommending a support position on. 2 really are seeking to improve forecasting and data management to help the state, which is a priority for the state, really figure out how do we affect and manage the effects of climate change right now and these kind of swings. We're being this whipsaw going between these really wet periods and then very dry, and it's happening very quickly. The other bill is a source control bill, and it's a PFAS bill, and so we're bringing that to you as well. So I'm going to walk you through each bill, and then I'll leave some time afterwards for questions, and then we can wrap up at the end. So the first one, AB 30, this is by Assemblymember Ward from San Diego. It's the Atmospheric Research Mitigation and Climate Forecasting Model. The intent of the bill is to really build on sort of the work of DWR to better forecast atmospheric rivers, and then to take that information and incorporate it into how they manage their reservoirs. Atmospheric rivers, as you know, provide up to about 40 to 50% of the state's precipitation and snowpack, but at the same time, they account for about 80% of the levee breaches in the Central Valley, and that's according to the Scripps Institute of Oceanography. So the bill requires DWR to develop new models and forecasting to better predict the atmospheric rivers' impacts, and then take actions within their existing authority to explicitly implement what is called Forecast-Informed Reservoir Operations, or FIRO for short. They refer to it as FIRO. So what FIRO does, basically, it combines that weather forecasting with the flexible operation of their policies for reservoir management. So essentially, they try to continue to reduce the flood risk while retaining more water supply, and that's accommodating for the changes that we're seeing in climate change, where we're not having as much snowpack and we're having more sort of runoff with these warmer temperatures. Sonoma County Water Agency is sponsoring the bill, and they've been leading this effort to test FIRO. They've been working with the Army Corps of Engineers because they have to, because they're the one that set the standards for reservoir operations, which they have jurisdiction. And then they've also been partnering with the Scripps Institute of Oceanography and doing this on Lake Mendocino. But others are also testing it to see if they too can update their flood control operating manuals. FIRO may not, however, produce immediate benefits for the district because there's limited application to our reservoir operations at the moment. However, sort of the better forecasting of atmospheric rivers can help us with better being prepared to manage for heavy rainfall and flooding. We have supported similar legislation in the past, but it wasn't enacted. It was AB 557 that would have provided funding in the budget for DWR's work on atmospheric rivers, but it was subsequently funded in a budget proposal that was enacted by the legislature. So there are no expected costs to the district, but there could be the benefits that I mentioned. And the other supporters are the trade associations, so Aqua, CMUA, CSDA, several water agencies, and there's no opposition at this time. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. President, let me interject, please. We heard these items at Ledge HR this morning, our committee, and we voted unanimously to support and recommend to the full board AB 30, AB 727, and SB 361.
Thank you for the report, Vice President McIntosh. I think that indicates that we could consider the group as a package when we take a motion. Why don't we hear an oral report about the remaining two bills before we entertain a motion?
Okay, I'll try to be quick. So AB 727 by Assemblymember Weber. She's a member from San Diego. This is the PFAS source control bill that I mentioned. It's focused on reducing PFAS by prohibiting PFAS in cleaning products like dish soap, detergents, floor wax, floor polish by January 1, 2025. The district has been supportive of similar measures. Because they can show up, as you know, in trace amounts when they're in these consumer and industrial products. They end up, in the environment, and then they end up in our water supply and also in our biosolids. And we have no way of controlling them. So the best approach here is to look at supporting these source control bills. In 2021, we supported AB 1200, which was Assemblymember Ding's bill that dealt with food packaging. And then in 2022, we supported AB 1817 that focused on textile products and banning PFAS in those. Obviously, the long-term benefits would outweigh the costs. Those costs may be minimal, but we may see an increase if PFAS is banned in cleaning products and their price. But again, the benefits to the district are greater than those costs, presumably. The bill is sponsored by the California Association of Sanitation Agencies and the Environmental Working Group, an environmental NGO, and there's no official list right now of supporters or opposition, and the staff recommendation on this one is also to support. Any questions about that one?
Yeah, so this covers. Sorry, does this then cover all PFAS-like compounds?
Yes,
So both current and imagined?
Correct.
Okay.
It covers what is intentionally added. So products that are actually manufactured for sale, potentially added, and then also what is the second part that you recommend, that you identified, that establishes thresholds for measuring for those sort of future introduced products.
No, I'm talking about not the products, but the PFAS compound itself, since the industry that is responsible for making PFAS, as soon as one gets banned, another compilation of chemicals that has similar properties gets developed and marketed. So does it
Yes.
cover those, not yet produced but contemplated substances that could then be added to products?
Exactly. That could then be added to cleaning products in this
Right,
case.
to the products that are covered by
correct. That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions on this one? Okay, and then the last one is SB 361. This bill is by Senator Dodd. This is the Water Resources Stream Gauges bill. So this really takes the next step to improve California's stream gauge network. Less than 70% of the state's watersheds actually have stream gauges on them, and then about only 50% actually provide the kind of metrics and information needed to manage water efficiently. So this bill is trying to address that problem. It requires, upon an appropriation by the legislature, that DWR and the State Water Board reactivate, upgrade, or install new stream gauges and develop a plan to provide for their long-term operations and maintenance. And that should be done in accordance with a stream gauge prioritization plan that came out this year that was released by DWR. A better stream gauge network would help the state manage for multiple benefits, both water supply and flood risk, water quality, and freshwater ecosystems. The bill requires DWR and the State Water Board to develop minimum operations and maintenance standards by 2030. And then all data that's acquired from these new stream gauges that receive public funding is to be made publicly available through an open water data platform that is managed currently by the state. And then DWR and the State Water Board are also required to consult with local agencies to figure out how we support the O&M funding. So staff recommendation is support. There could be cost to the districts to reactivate or upgrade stream gauges. There are 3 of our gauges that are identified in this prioritization plan that are Tier 1. But there is also funding that has been proposed in the governor's budget totaling $4.675 million for this purpose, for the reactivation. So we would be eligible, presumably if the legislature passes that provision of the budget, to access some of those funds to support those upgrades. It's also important to note this is a priority for the administration. The governor's water supply strategy that came out last summer had identified that there's the need for multi-agency efforts across the state to actually install 430 new stream gauges and upgrade about 200. So TNC is the sponsor of this bill. Other supporters include environmental groups, Aqua, CMUA, and some agricultural groups, and there's currently no opposition. So I'm happy to take any questions about that one.
Director Coleman?
I don't have any questions because I did support the 3 bills this morning. I think it's actually very good that the state and the water agencies are working together in a proactive manner on AB 30 and SB 303 that will help identify and hopefully develop a more comprehensive water supply for the future that we all rely on.
Got a motion, John?
I move.
I'll second.
Okay, and I will confirm that the motion is to approve all 3, support positions on all 3.
It's a motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Director Patterson, seconded by Director Coleman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? The motion carries. Thank you. Do you have any other updates about what's happening at the legislature?
Sure, just briefly. What I wanted to say, I think I mentioned in committee this morning, it may seem like a little bit of a slow start. You know, we're not bringing lots of bills to the board. That's because we have many new members and a lot of bills were introduced and there's a lot of amendments happening. A lot of bills are being substantially amended. The other thing is policy committees are now just kicking into gear fully. The legislature gavelled close the special session that was to address the special tax or the need to address a tax to deal with the high cost of gasoline. And they took action on that, and so they adjourned that session. So now all attention really is on the policy bills. And we're looking at those very carefully once they've been amended and then to see which ones are for consideration, if appropriate, and bring to the board that support the state initiatives. So, but there are many right now that we're still going through. And then I think on the federal update, similarly, there aren't any bills. There have been some bills introduced, but we're looking at those and watching those right now. There's nothing of note that I'm ready to bring yet to the board. Congress is on spring recess right now, and we'll just continue to keep you updated in future board meetings.
Thank you. Anything of note in the budget process from the legislature's first committee hearing rounds in the water budget, the water agency's budgets?
Yeah, nothing of note right now. These really have been sort of pro forma hearings where they've been hearing from the administration who's been presenting the governor's proposed budget. And then they're waiting, and what we'll wait to see are what are the spring revenues look like when we see the spring and the May revise, and that's really when the rubber meets the road, where we'll actually begin to see, you know, what are going to be the priorities and what they're going to move forward. But I would say at the moment there's nothing of note.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We now move on to items 11A and 11B. To authorize actions related to the third-year general salary increase for employees. I will proceed with some additional comments and an announcement. Pursuant to Section 54953C3 of the Government Code, the Board of Directors is providing an oral report for item 11B prior to taking action on the salary schedule and compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits paid to the members of the senior management team that are listed on our agenda, including the general manager and the general counsel. In accordance with resolution number 35269-22 and the employment agreements with the general manager and the general counsel, the board may authorize the same general salary increases and benefits to the general manager and the general counsel as that granted to district employees and the department director level. As such, it is recommended that the general manager and the general counsel each receive a 5.4% increase to their current annual salary as set forth in their respective employment agreements and commensurate with the 5.4% increase being granted to all district employees in these proposed actions effective April 24th, 2023. The 5.4% increase consists of a cost of living increase of 4.9% based on the Consumer Price Index and an additional 0.5%. Additionally, it is recommended that the following members of the senior management team also be granted a 5.4% increase in their current annual salary, commensurate with the increase being granted to all district employees in this board action effective April 24th, 2023. Those include the Secretary of the District, Director of Engineering and Construction, Director of Finance, Director of Operations and Maintenance, Director of Wastewater, Director of Water and Natural Resources, Director of Customer and Community Services, Director of Human Resources, Special Assistant 3 for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Culture, Special Assistant 4 for Legislative Affairs, and Special Assistant 4 for Public Affairs. The current salaries of the affirmation members of the senior management team are contained in the salary schedule dated April 25th, 2022, on file with the Secretary of the District. We may take action on items 11A and 11B together by one motion. So that's some recommended information for the board. Is there any discussion or a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Director Patterson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Director Young. I'll call on Director Chan and then Director.
Like messing up the last names.
You are correct. I'm not. I'm. I'm seeing one head further out in a row, and I am not going with what I hear, and that is a function of this table. It's been seconded by Director Linney. I will call on.
Like Lisa and sounding like Doug. This is interesting. Okay.
I will call on Director Chan and then Director Coleman.
I mean, yeah, I have a question. So 11A, the 5.4 figure, that's a result of bargaining, is that correct? Whereas when it comes to 11B, that's discretionary.
I just want to make sure that we get the correct answer. Is it appropriate for staff to provide factual answers?
11A is as a result of the bargaining. 11B is what we have typically provided to all the confidentials and management and senior management, what all the other representative groups get.
Okay, so you're telling me that traditionally and historically, A and B are usually tied together the way that they are in this motion.
Correct.
Director Coleman?
If I would ask that 11A and 11B be separated.
Okay, we will take the votes on a severed basis. Is that okay with the mover and seconder?
Yes, I would move it again.
Okay, both items have been moved. Just last call for comments or questions from the board. Okay, we will take the vote on 11A first. All those in favor, please say, before we call the vote, I see Director Chan.
No, I was just going to vote in favor of 11A.
Oh, okay, all right, sorry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Motion carries. 11A has been approved. We move to 11B.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Patterson and seconded by Director Young
Good on you.
to approve 11B.
I'm just wondering more about the background. So this is always tied together. And I was wondering how performance evaluations are conducted if there's blanket pay raises.
These are not performance-based.
It may make sense to explain the difference between the general salary increase and the pay for performance practice at the district.
Yeah, so for the managers and confidentials, I mean, there's slight differences, but generally speaking, depending on where they are on the salary scale, depending on their performance rating, whether it's meets or needs, you get nothing. If you get if you get needs improvement or unacceptable, you will get nothing. If you get a meets for managers, there's discretion on whether or not there's any bonus pay, but there's no salary increase as with respect to their performance. And then if you get an exceeds or exceptional, the you will get there's a range that you can give a person in terms of their salary increase. And then if you get the exceptional, the employee has a choice to apply it all to their salary increase or take a portion or all of it as a bonus. But it also depends on where they are on the scale, because once you get to the top of the scale, the only thing you can get is a bonus.
So 5.4 isn't the floor, or is it the floor?
This is a general salary increase based on the negotiated salary, not the performance pay.
Okay, so is performance pay an additional to the 5.4? I'm sorry if I'm really generally confusing, but is it?
No.
Good question.
Performance pay is separate from the general salary increase.
Oh, so someone could get something above a 5.4 with exceptional performance.
After the annual performance, correct.
Okay, what about getting something below? I mean, so the person who gets a low ranking, anyone, would still get a 5.4 because that's tied to inflation?
That's tied to the general salary increase, which includes the CPI component.
Okay. I'm just going to abstain.
Yeah, so this increase just keeps the general salary of our senior management team up to pace with inflation, and every member of the board has received the explanation years ago at some point. So it's a very appropriate question to understand what our comprehensive pay program is. I think it's important to keep our salaries at pace with inflation to keep attracting quality talent for not just our senior management team, but also our general workforce, as we approved in the last motion. Any further comments?
Yeah, I would just add, again, this is tied to the contracts that were negotiated for the general employees, and the same goes for, well, the same could be said goes for the management employees for the reasons that Andy just gave.
So are they ever separated? The two increases, are they ever separated? 11A and 11B.
I can't say if ever, not in my recollection.
Well, we literally are taking separate actions on them, but have they? I don't recall a time that they've been separate numbers, but that we might be corrected.
So you're asking, have the general salary increase been separated between what was negotiated in the MOU and what's offered to the managers and confidentials, or not to my recollection?
We legally could, because there's no contract that requires it, but it is it's a good practice for employee morale to have all employees treated in a similar way, if unless there's a specific reason that it should be higher or lower. Seeing no further comments, I will call the question on the motion to approve 11B. Roll call. Yeah, it's been requested to have roll call.
Got it. Director Coleman,
Abstain.
Director Chan,
Abstain.
Director Linney,
Yes.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
President Katz.
Yes. Motion carries. We move on to item number 12, the general manager's report.
Yeah, it certainly seems like we've gone from winter to spring in a weekend. Today is our last water supply update for the water year. Dave Briggs, our Director of Operations and Maintenance, will provide the update. I do want to let you know that at our April 25th board meeting, we will be bringing our final water supply availability and deficiency report. Dave.
Okay, thank you, Clifford. Good afternoon, President Katz and members of the board. And I'm going to try to control it from here with Risha's approval.
Should be able to.
Okay, so there's an outline of the presentation and an aerial view of a very full San Pablo reservoir. And with respect to our water production and water sales, as Clifford just mentioned, we had a gorgeous weekend. It did feel like spring this weekend for the first time in quite some time. You can see the red line, which shows our water production for this fiscal year remains very low. But this data is only through last Friday. So I strongly suspect that when we get this updated, you're going to see water production take off as people begin to irrigate and demand will pick up. And we're ready for it. But all of the forecasted sales and projections, even though they are low, they're still 10% below 2020, is well within the conservative assumptions that finance has made in terms of revenue. Not surprising, the statistics are shown here for the upper McElmy watershed, well above average, twice the rain and precipitation and snow in the months of December, January, March, somewhat of a slow start for April, but all in all, we're well above average. And similarly here, I've got an additional slide that shows just the Oakland precipitation, but again, 3 months were very, very productive and have surpassed the season total by a large margin. And we'll see what else we can get here in April and May. The snowpack, still among the highest we've ever recorded, both in terms of depth and the density of the snow, and getting a lot of questions about what's going to happen when all this snowpack melts, as are many reservoir operators in the Sierras, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the short story is we're more than ready for this snow to come down. To melt down very slowly. So here is a chart showing our storage upcountry and as well as the East Bay. And you can see that the only hole that we have is Comanche. Right now, under our permit with the Corps of Engineers, we're obligated to have 200,000 acre feet of storage vacated upcountry. We have 250 if we include what we call transferable space in the PG&E storage, which is completely compatible with our permit. But all in all, we have 250 if we count PG&E, and we only need 200. We're maintaining a relatively high release right now at 4,000 CFS. The planning committee saw some photographs of the lower McElmy of that high flow. We're hoping to begin the ramp down on Tuesday. We're waiting for DWR's runoff forecast, which we should get on Monday. If it doesn't throw us for any surprises, we'll start to ramp down the Comanche release on Tuesday. We're trying to avoid ramping down and then having to go back again to a higher flow. That's not going to be an operational problem, but it could confuse the public and people recreating down in the lower river, and we don't want to do that. So we're just going to try to slowly ramp it down methodically. Locally, we have a little bit of flow, 10, 20 cubic feet per second coming off of Chabot Reservoir and USL Reservoir. That will taper off. I forgot to mention, the next 2 weeks are forecast to be dry. So we can't really see much beyond that, but we're not expecting any atmospheric rivers at this point. So we expect some of the flow that's coming below Chabot and USL to taper off in the next week. We may begin a controlled release at USL that will stay within the channel and allow the golf course below USL to continue the recovery work that they're doing right now.
Back, you were talked about the PG&E. Well, you was on that slide, but it's not on the slide at all.
Oh, the PG&E storage.
I don't remember hearing that much about how that works. And
yeah, it's very complicated, and we typically don't get into that type of detail. But long story short is that we can claim credit for some vacated storage and PG&E storage during certain times of the year, and it's capped. And there are rules for it, and we call that the transferable space.
For it, meaning that we can use that storage capacity
yes.
if it comes down to it.
Right. At the end of the day, as long as there's a place to store the water, the Corps of Engineers, I'm making it very simple, but
yeah, right.
Whether it's up there or down here, it's still going to provide the same flood control benefit.
And if PG&E isn't claiming generation needs or capacity.
If it's vacant, we can claim credit for it during certain times of the year.
Oh, I see. Oh, capacity.
There's no,
the
there's no,
part.
yeah,
Okay.
sorry if
All
I wasn't clear. Yeah, there's actually no water there. Like there's still plenty of room in PG&E storage.
Gotcha. I was somehow doing an Andy and but full.
Since we're talking about PG&E storage, can you update us on what PG&E or the other groups in the upper watershed are looking at doing to release water, bring it back up, release later on in the year for energy production?
It's hard to know exactly what PG&E plans to do. They do have a lot of room right now. The snowpack, as you know, is epic. And you've probably heard about the prices of hydro power these days. So I think PG&E, from what I've heard from our staff who communicate to PG&E, we expect them to slowly fill. but they've got storage up there right now. We expect them to slowly fill in the next 2 or 3 months.
But what about that project that's being discussed?
Oh.
The pump storage.
Yeah.
The Green Gen project.
Mike may give you the best update on that.
Sure. I believe we provided an update to the board at the Planning Committee in February on the Green Gen project, which is a private enterprise looking to build a project on top of PG&E's system that would pump water back up into upper reservoirs during periods of power excess and then generate additional power during periods where there was a need for more power. That project is in the kind of early stages of FERC permitting and licensing, and East Bay MUD staff has been providing input on what needs to be studied by FERC before it can be authorizing this project. And that includes some of our concerns around water quality impacts for water that's cycling repeatedly in the system and could potentially increase temperature, for example. So those studies are just getting underway. I think there's a 1 to 2 year study period. And at the end of that time, we'll have some better information about what else needs to be evaluated and what the potential impacts are to the district.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. So at our last meeting, the total system storage was at 90% of capacity, and it's interesting. I mean, my understanding is that we don't really want the total system to be exactly at 100%, because then we end up having we end up having to spill somewhere, and that leads to problems for our neighbors. But I'm wondering what given the amount of snowpack that's out there, we expect less rain, very, very much less rain in the coming months. What's the outlook for Comanche going forward, given how much, given that a lot of the snow melt will come into PG&E's relatively lower capacity reservoir, a small portion of the watershed between PG&E's facility and us that may have natural drainage. What's the outlook for Comanche over the next few months?
Well, I think the simple answer is we expect it to nearly fill. Like Comanche and Pardee by July 1st will probably be within 1% of full if we operate perfectly.
Mm-hmm. So a total system storage of 84% now means that we
99.9.
all from snowpack.
Yeah, if we were to come back on July 1st, you would see that 84 be a 99.
Yeah, it's a remarkable year, and it makes you wonder if we had just a drop more rain, we would have even more difficult management challenges.
Right, and I think I mentioned this before, that the hydrology that we're getting now doesn't really change our carryover storage or where we're going to be on July 1st or even on October 1st. The only thing that it's affecting now is how much we release down the river between now and next fall.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, so just a few words about the statewide. This graphic speaks for itself. These are the atmospheric rivers that have come to the western United States this year. I think typically in California, on average, we get 4, maybe 5 atmospheric rivers typically. 2 or 3 will probably give the state all the water supply it needs. That's enough. I think we got 16 or 18 this year, including a very powerful one just after Christmas that was underpredicted, I would say, by the National Weather Service and caught a lot of people off guard. This graphic here, if I can do this a little bit. Oh, thank you, whoever did that. It shows you, this is Oakland precipitation. It only shows back 20 years or so, but you can see that it's been quite a year for Oakland for the precip here. And then snowpack in the Sierras. I believe the Southern Sierra has set a record. The Central Sierra may have also set a record. Very large snowpacks. You may have also heard that Tulare Lake is going to reappear for the first time in 25 years down there in the southern San Joaquin Valley. And the flooding is, we haven't heard the last of those stories. It's not going to be pretty in the Tulare Basin. There's going to be a lot of flooding down there.
David, on Tulare, the reservoir that disappeared 100 years ago, how long may it take for it to subside? And two, how much do they believe it can recharge the groundwater basin?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the second question, but I did read that there's going to be a lake there for probably 2 to 3 months,
Okay.
if not longer. It's going to be there a while. Yeah, and I can only hope that that does a substantial benefit to the groundwater basin there, like it used to. And then, of course, looking at the central southern Sierra, that trajectory also bodes well for the Colorado, and which bodes well for the state of California. And on the Colorado side, the manager told me this morning that they've seen the best year in 25 years on the Colorado. And then finally, just last two slides. This is our precipitation upcountry, not quite at the 1983 level, but still well above average. And we'll see what the next few months give us, but not much of the water you're left at this point. And then finally, just to show you the runoff, if we can get up to 1,500 1,000 acre feet of runoff this year, that'll probably be top 5 for this basin. So pretty darn good year. And you can see here this is just 13 years, but it's already in second place in the last 13 years, and it could end up in the top 5. All right, so have a nice spring.
Questions? Yeah, I was just wondering if you have any more details about the Colorado River and also the groundwater basins in the Central Valley.
Well, the Colorado River is a big topic. There's been a lot of news about the new agreements that are getting forged by the Bureau of Reclamation because that river is chronically oversubscribed. And so everybody's going to probably take a cut when those new agreements are activated in 2026. They're going to buy some time. This year is going to buy some time and avoid some pain for several years. But the next dry year, Lake Mead was almost close to not generating power, which would have spawned another impact in the state of California. So we kind of dodged a bullet there. But those agreements will forge new allocations on the Colorado that the Department of the Interior is leading, and they'll be activated probably in 2026. The more that Southern California loses off the Colorado puts pressure up here.
Right. Okay.
David, well, actually, I thought they have a limit on how much they can take from the Delta into Southern California.
Metropolitan?
Yes.
They have a contract.
Right, but there's a limit on how much they can take. And have they maxed out before? Did they max out last year, the year before?
I've not heard of, if you're talking about Metropolitan.
Well, it's just, I'm talking about the contractors going in the state and federal channels. I know that one of the arguments that people have argued against with the expansion of the tunnels, or whatever is being discussed today, is that it's going to allow for more water to be transported from north to south. But I've been told repeatedly that there's only X amount you can move from north to south because of contracts and legal obligations.
That is generally true. Maybe in the marginal years where it's not super wet, it's not super dry, if they have alternative conveyance in the Delta, they may be able to get more out than they used to because they might be able to avoid certain regulatory or ecological problems. But that's a very difficult question, Director Coleman, I think, to answer with a simple answer.
Can we get a memo that maybe is not as simple so we can look at it?
Mike, do you want to provide a more complicated answer?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of say the same thing. It's a very complex question, but there are multiple constraints that at different times of year and different year types affect how much water can move south from the Delta. They include the limitations, the capacity limitations of the pumps, the environmental limitations of water quality limitations in the Delta itself, as well as the contract limitations. So it all depends on a lot of different factors. The idea behind the Delta Conveyance Project, the current version of that program, is to capture flows in years like this and take peak flows, and at least that's what we understand it to be. There's a lot more behind it than that, of course, but I don't know that even in a year like this, the projects are not giving full allocations. Neither the federal nor state side have full allocations for their south of Delta contractors, primarily because of pumping capacity constraints.
Okay. I have another question for David. Sorry, David. So we're going to have a lot of water flowing down the McCullum. A lot of the rivers are going to be maxed out this year. How do we envision or have our biologists looked at how that may impact the salmon runs for fall? And is it going to be beneficial? It's going to be cold water. It's going to be more water. And how will it be beneficial to the state? Because, excuse me, salmon fishing is now prohibited because of the production. There's not enough salmon, so it's been shut down. Is this going to help year 1, year 2, year 3?
Mike might have the biological answer for that.
Yeah, again, I'm an engineer pretending to be a biologist at the moment, but when the ocean fishing season is shut down, the expectation is that there will be more salmon returning to the rivers. So in the near term, we can expect a bump up, but at some point they're going to start fishing again. Part of what happened is also that last year more fish were caught than expected. They were kind of expecting about 200,000 salmon to be caught in the ocean. They actually caught over 300,000 salmon. So it affected the ability to continue to catch fish this year. So I don't know if I've completely answered your question, but that's
helpful. So I thought Fish and Game and the other regulatory agencies put a limit on how much salmon can be caught.
They do, and the way that Department of Fish and Wildlife calculates that number, they don't know until the end where they landed, and they ended up fishing more than they thought they would.
They overfished.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say that technically, but yes, the numbers were higher than they anticipated.
Because it's like a $1.4 billion hit to the fishing industry for salmon and crabs this year by what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a cycle that lasts beyond this year. It feels counterintuitive before you understand the fishery science that a wet year this year really is more correlated to what happens next year or the year after. What we're really feeling is the hit of a severely dry year last year and a moderately dry year the year before.
And failure of the Sacramento River fishery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the board had a report this morning about that part of why the catch percentages are so good for McCallum fish is because some of the other rivers have really seen a real collapse in return. And to speak to the timing, the salmon life cycle is 3 years. So salmon that are born this year will be returning to the river in 2026. So, there's a 3-year lag when we look at how the cycles are working.
Okay. Helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Looks like we are on the question slide. Any more questions about the water supply report, or would you like to close?
That's all I have for you this afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Dave. And then attached is the monthly report, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Any questions on the general manager's monthly report?
Just a quick question. I see how much our water production is, which is substantially lower than March of this year, March of last year, March of 2020, and the average. What's that going to be an impact in terms of our finances? I mean, I know it takes like 5 to 7 years to go back to what you were before a drought in water usage.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of the water use for this year's budget, I mean, we did budget around 145.8 million gallons per day on average. We're getting closer to 139 million gallons per day. In terms of this year's budget, we're actually fairly close to what we budgeted, in part for 3 reasons, because we did get the 4% increase in the rates. We also had the drought surcharge to help us through, as well as the excessive use surcharge. For the 24-25 budget, we did budget conservatively for a lower production, lower water sales, for 24 than we would have if we hadn't been in a drought.
And the reason water production is so low is because of the atmospheric rivers and the extraordinary rainfall, not the drought.
Exactly. But as far as when you look at our overall annual water demand, I mean, it's that average is driven strongly by the higher demand periods. So when you have slightly lower demand in January, February, and March, whether you have rain or not, the actual end of year is largely driven by what we see in the summertime.
Are there any public comments on the general manager's report, including the water supply update? Seeing none, we will go to reports and director comments. First, committee reports. The minutes from the March 28th, 2023 Finance and Administration Committee meeting were included in your packet. We will now receive reports from this morning's Planning Committee and Legislative Human Resources Committee meetings. First, Planning.
This morning we heard 3 items. First was on the McCollum Fisheries update. You got some of the highlights of that from just the discussion right now. McCollum story is a good one. Sacramento River story is a not so good one. Second report was with the water quality regulatory update, revisions to the lead and copper rule. Is requiring us to have to look at galvanized piping, the galvanized requiring replacement, otherwise known as the GRR. And so we're going to have to take a look at some of the homes that were built between 42 and 45 that may be affected by this. And then we went on to PFAS regulations. Heard updates on that, and East Bay MUD is monitoring that. We found it is a very difficult issue to describe exactly what we're doing and what the problem is and what this impacts to people's or potential impacts to people's health are. And I think we're going to do some follow-up on that. And finally, we got a update from the annual recreation report, both in the McCollum watershed and the East Bay watershed. Headline is numbers are returning in terms of people visiting those facilities. Numbers are up for the number of hikers who discovered that we have trails that they can hike on, and that we have some new condo-style Comanche Park models at Comanche Reservoir that no, they're not trailers. They're very nice looking. They're going to be opening. Marguerita's planning to hold a party for everyone there. That's what I think I heard. So it was a good report on the recreation.
Thank you, Director Linney. For Ledge HR, Vice President McIntosh.
Yes, I covered it really during this meeting, during our Ledge update, but we received during Ledge HR's committee meeting this morning an update and considered positions on AB 30, Atmospheric Rivers Research Mitigation and Climate Forecasting, and AB 727, Product Safety, Cleaning Products. And finally, SB 361, Water Resources, and that's stream gauges. And we had unanimous support for each of those. And then a general update on legislative issues of interest to East Bay MUD. We received both those reports during our meeting today. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Vice President McIntosh. We have an item for other items for future consideration. You can submit those items for future consideration to the General Manager. Thank you if you have already submitted your written comments for director comments to the Secretary. Are there any verbal director comments? Okay. I have one adjournment in memory, but I want to just make sure we've taken any director comments before we move on. Director Patterson.
Well, the main thing I wanted to call attention to, and we did that at the earlier committee meeting. The Louisville situation with the deaths that occurred and the officer who's still out that was shot, I would just like to call attention to the board and say gun control is a real issue in the country now. We're having lots of trouble. We should be alert here because that kind of trouble can carry over. And so I think we should do everything we can around our employees, our workers, and everybody hopefully will be safe, but be on your P's and Q's. This is not a good time. And I would just like to make that comment to say, we have a lot of things going on around the country. I mentioned Louisville, but that's not the only one. And many of these things are coming back to haunt people because we haven't done a good job with the basic. And gun control is an issue. Our worker safety is an issue. Our families, people we represent, be alert. That's my comment.
Thank you, Director Patterson. I would like to, with permission from the board, adjourn this meeting in memory of Karen Hemphill, who we lost within the last week. She was a beloved member of the Berkeley community and had been on the Berkeley Unified School District Board from 2006 through 2018. She also served as city clerk for the city of Emeryville. She, among her many contributions to the district that she served on, many remember Karen Hemphill as an advocate for career technical education, particularly STEM programs and facilities. Her service was extraordinary. She was president of the elementary school, Washington Elementary School site, and was very involved in the Parent-Student Teacher Association at Berkeley Unified. So there's really a lot that I could go on to say. She was remembered by School Board President Laura Babbitt in her comments as truly a giant among us. She was a fierce champion for educational justice, and the fruits of her labor can most readily be seen through the current career technical education programs within BUSD. Karen's fight for funding to develop living wage job training opportunities, such as fire science, carpentry, and robotics programs, are still going strong today. Berkeley's state-of-the-art STEM facilities, such as the Berkeley High Fabrications Lab, can also be attributed directly to her fierce advocacy. Even as we have had students headed to compete for worldwide title in robotics, these opportunity seeds were planted under Karen Hemphill's leadership on the Board of Education. We at the district also did work with her in her role as city clerk in Emeryville, and for that reason, I request without objection that we adjourn in her memory. Thank you. The next meeting of the board will be held on Tuesday, April 25th, 2023 at 1:15 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned.